All right, we're gonna talk about fire extinguishers today. Did you know that?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to go about using a fire extinguisher, but the human body.
Yeah, we are. We are going to talk about fire extinguishers, but we're just gonna chit chat a little bit casual before we get there because we are human, after all. And it's even though we talk science and food, it's fun if you get to know what's going on behind us. So behind Sarah right now are three dogs. Mine is outside of my office, but Sarah has her own, and you got who else's dog do you have like
Yeah,
accompanying the
I've got my
podcast?
dog Archie, who's a 100-pound Great Pyrenees rescue. And then my parents have two dogs. They're both English Springer Spaniels, and so they're visiting. And when any of our dogs get like out of their routine, they are reactive and lose their minds. So if you hear a little noise or a little jingle or hopefully not too much barking, but
Yeah,
if
we'll
I
get the
keep 'em
fire extinguisher out, right? The one we're going to use in the body
I
today.
know. If
But
I keep them in
uh,
the office, they're usually okay. If they're downstairs and they can hear everything, they're just going to go nuts. So it'll
it's
be better
life.
if they're right
It's
here.
life, and it makes it real on this podcast. So, um, just before we jump into fire extinguisher, and you're wondering wait a minute, are we going to learn like how to protect our homes here? No, you're going to learn how to protect your bodies. But Sarah and I were both making eggs this morning. And if you listen to our last podcast, we talked about runny eggs versus cooked. Sarah likes them bunny. I don't. And we were just chit chatting via text this morning, getting ready. And Sarah's like, "So, how's your eggs?" Well, they were cooked, Sarah.
I was like, I'm just going to have a little more time this morning to make my runny eggs.
Runny
And I
eggs.
just know she's going, ugh.
So that made me think, like, what have you made in the kitchen? What have you made for yourself or the
Mm.
family or guests of late that was like super interesting, maybe different, super yummy?
Yeah, I think I was introduced to chimichurri in like maybe 2010, 2011. I'd never really had it before. I wouldn't say I grew up in a home that used a lot of spices outside of maybe like chili powder and Italian seasoning. That was kind of about it. Very Midwestern. But when I had a chimichurri at this bakery in Chicago called Baker and Nosh, which was down the street from my house, sadly it has closed and doesn't exist anymore. But they made this steak sandwich and put chimichurri on it with their homemade bread, and it was like a ribeye. Oh my goodness, it was so good.
Mm.
But anyways, I look for any opportunity that I can make chimichurri, and so I've been looking at this cookbook from Orthomolecular that has this chimichurri chicken. And so I made, and my husband's a vegetarian. So this comes into play. This is very useful information if you have people with food allergies or preferences. Is how do you cook for multiple people who've got multiple, food needs? So I made this chimichurri as a marinade, and so I put chicken in it, marinated it, put it on the grill, but then I saved some of it and tossed just some cannellini beans in it for
There
my
you go.
husband. And then I had CSA greens, and then I had roasted asparagus. So I put the asparagus with the marinade, put that on the grill. So basically, everything had this chimichurri on it, and I still
That's
couldn't get enough of it. But it had onion, jalapeno, garlic, red wine vinegar, salt, fresh cilantro, and parsley. It should have had fresh oregano, but I only had dried. So you got to do what you
it
got to do.
worked.
Olive oil and then the chicken in it. And so I give my husband a hard time though. I was like, and then I marinated the chicken in the chimichurri, and then I tossed the beans in the same one. And he was like, wait, what? So don't ever, reuse your marinade that you put in raw meat in.
Oh
Just so
yeah,
you
that's a
know, in
good
case you
point. Yeah.
didn't know that, that is a food safety problem.
Yeah, don't do that.
But
Separate the batch.
I know,
I
I
guess
get
you
to give
could
him a hard.
toss like tofu in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, right?
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
epic, and it's such a. I mean, once you make the rest, I mean, you could do it like hand chop it lovingly,
It went in the
infuse.
food processor
Yeah,
is
it goes in the
awesome.
food
Yep.
processor, but you can
Or
lovingly
the
chop
frozen
everything,
slice.
right? But no, food
Mhm.
processor, you can freeze that too. I'll do that, like big batch, put it in
Oh,
cubes, but
yeah. You like your cubes.
yeah. And then sometimes you can change it by throwing like mint in there, go sideways. It's like a pesto, but
Mm,
it's not. I'm with you. And I think what kicks it is the garlic and the red peppers, right? It just lifts it. So
yeah.
yum. Talk
Yeah,
about food queen.
this one had a jalapeno in it, but I could see crushed red pepper being really good as
Yeah.
a substitute if you don't have that on hand.
Food
Yeah.
gene crosstalk, baby. Herbs and spices
Hmm.
probably have the most number of gene talking elements called polyphenols or bioactives in any food, right? We always talk about that. You put food under the microscope, and if we're looking for polyphenols, which you wouldn't, you do an assay, right? Like herbs and spices exponentially, whether they're fresh or whether they're dried, come out on the top, probably right next to olive oil.
Hmm.
Just a plug.
Yeah. What have you made recently, Amanda?
I have been
Delicious.
busy with Ottolenghi. You'll see me post that every once in a while, like, oh, Ottolenghi stopped by. So Ottolenghi is an Israeli British chef,
Mm.
really, I think Israeli by birth, but has money, restaurants and cookbooks. Just an incredible chef and team of chefs that works with him. He'll be honest about he's not the only innovator, but he has a beautiful Middle Eastern flair, which could be all the way from Turkey to North Africa, to include Tunisia, Morocco, Israel, of course, Lebanon, etc. I'm like, okay, my friend gave me a ton of Swiss chard, and usually I'll just saute that up. It's Swiss chard season. I thought, who's doing more interesting? And up pops a gratin from Ottolenghi. I'm like, that's it. I'm in with Ottolenghi again. And so it was a gratin with potatoes
We
and
say
Swiss
that
chard.
gratin in
A
the
gratin,
Midwest.
a gratin, a gratin. Oh yeah, in the Midwest, a
Gratin.
gratin. Like
Just for
what?
everyone else who's less bougie than, than
She
you.
That's a gratin. A gratin. Le gratin, c'est un gratin.
Potatoes
No.
gratin.
Oh, we say in English spud gratin with chard. So
Hmm.
anyway, Swiss chard. I don't know where we're at today, but anyway, enjoy us. You and I, you've caught me on a podcast before. Once I get going in a different language, I'm like, okay, now I can't think of the words in English. So I just said we are giggling around. So in French, we say rigoler is to kind of mess around and joke around and just laugh and chit chat. So on rigole un petit peu. We're just laughing in here. So anyway, it's a gratin. Now I can't even say a gratin with Swiss chard. So those are the layers. You stir it all up. We put a tiny bit of cheese in. So my husband cannot do dairy, cow dairy. So put like a Pyrenees, like 3 ounces of cheese. And this was like 2 pounds of potato. We're still eating it. It's like, who are you cooking for, Amanda? But anyway, what was cool about it, but being Ottolenghi-esque, is you start off by sauteing these onions for like 20 minutes. So you just soften them and brown them.
Mm.
And right after you're done, you shove in a tablespoon and a half of sumac. So sumac is
Oh.
just this beautiful, like it's this tart, it's a berry, right? But it's this tart, citrusy almost flavor. So you've done that, and then you get your potatoes and Swiss chard and garlic and lemon zest and like 2 bunches of parsley. So epic Ottolenghi, this much, like a grocery cart full of herbs. And in that all goes, and you stir in these onions and the sumac mixture, and then you bake that. I put it in a creuset. And then at the same time, you keep a part of those onions and then you mix them in with toasted pine nuts. Now, he toasts his in brown butter, go figure. Or you create the brown butter, which is epic, right? For those of you like, I can't believe you did brown butter. Well, I did. You can do olive oil if you want. You can just toast them. But you serve that almost as a condiment on top. So I got it in the New York Times. It was an Ottolenghi Swiss chard gratin with a twist. You've ruined my dish.
Sorry. The Midwest
Gratin.
ruined it.
Anyway, so that's what I did. All right, love.
Sounds
You know,
delicious.
it was kind of good because you can layer it up for the kids. Kids don't often like food that touches itself, right, or layers up. So, but you could change that out maybe with sweet potatoes, right, and you could amp the greens, change the greens out so the kid accessible or what have you. But it was neat, Sarah. Next time you're out here, big old pot. We'll separate it out for those who are nervous, right? Like a little bit, like you chase your food around your plate, stepping stones through the food. But yeah, it was cool.
They're doing pretty good adding new foods in. If you just give them a little bit at a time and let them, like
100%.
when they're picky, like one blueberry and just like there's only one, not like a pile of
Yeah.
blueberries and they struggle with that and then there's meltdowns and fights and it's like give them a little bit and give them more of the things that you know that they're going to eat and it's okay. It's a
It
process.
is. We on ramp carefully and cautiously. We know that with adults. I mean, so many of the foods that we need on our work, our clients may not be eating. They're afraid it's hurt them. They don't know what it tastes like, can't find it at the grocery store. So it is bit by bit, but that also extends the journey to wellness, right? To health restoration when we have to tiptoe through the food to help people on their journey. Sarah, we were going to talk about tea, but now we've talked about ottolenghi, gratins, and chimichurri.
We could save it for next time.
Yeah, we'll save tea for next time. All right, let's talk about fire extinguishers and why on earth this episode's about fire extinguishers. Well, we had a request from one of our listeners to talk about oxidative stress, which is this big sort of word, like what on earth is that? Well, Sarah's going to define that in a moment. But just to sort of set the stage, I think many of us listening in are familiar with inflammation, and we think of inflammation as being the fire, right? And think of oxidative stress as being the spark. And if you think about a fire, like one of the ways you want to contain a fire is to stop the spark, because a fire will actually give off sparks, which will kindle even more fire, even more inflammation. And so what we want to talk about then is oxidative stress and how the body handles it through it's a kind of a double layered system. So that's where we're headed today, and give you tools at the end of it to think about this. And of course, we're going to step through the genes that are involved in this, because our podcast is called Beyond the Sequence, where we're looking at how your genes inform how you're built and how you can have a conversation with your genes through the food you choose, the way you move, the lifestyle that you live. But let's jump in, Sarah, and can we explain what oxidative stress is? How you can explain it at a scientific level, and then how you explain it to your clients. Let's roll.
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is to maybe start at the more basic level, like how I explain it for my athletes. So, you know, performing every day, we're exercising constantly. And so even just the general metabolic function of the human body is to take, substrates. We've got all these ingredients, if you will, and we've got to make products. So human biochemistry, we're helping usher that in a healthful way day to day. But for athletes and for anyone who's breathing and living, the more oxygen we use, the more oxidative stress we have. And I think initially we hear oxidative stress and we go, oh my gosh, that's so bad. But it's really a process that we were created to have. So an excess of oxidative stress is reactive oxygen species, or ROS, or free radicals, or free radical damage. Maybe you've heard some of these phrases before. And I may have shared this on the podcast before, but when I was a kid, I recall watching a Neutrogena commercial with Jennifer Garner, and she was scrubbing her face and, washing with this product, and it was supposed to help, quench or get rid of free radicals. And I was like, free radicals? That sounds like a made up phrase, until I took my nutrition courses, and I was like, oh, that's real. So it was, just kind of like, okay, well, what is that? It feels so elusive, and that ushers in inflammation. And I know I've had conversations with my mom about this, where she would go to the doctor and they just keep telling me I have inflammation. She's like, but what do I do with it? What is that? So I have this visual of like inflammation, what causes inflammation. That could be your radioactive exposures. Even being in an airplane, you have radioactive exposure when you're up in the air. And so people who are constantly traveling or flying, you have to support neutralizing and detoxifying. So we'll come back to like the food piece and how that plays a role in it later. But, your body and inflammation while you're working out or exercising, but you add in too many of these reactive oxygen species, and then we see a lot of disease. And so it just sort of is this process that is part of the human body. But eventually, if we've got it and we've got it chronically and we can't handle it, we're headed down a road we don't want to go down. So anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. So I think the big picture, right, oxidative stress, and we can get into we can get a little bit more granular with it. But as you said, the body, just by being alive, produces these free radicals. And you want to those of you in the science, that's O2 minus, remember that? So I like to tell people The O2 minus looks like a two-legged stool that's missing the third leg. And so
Hmm.
oxidative stress, the way we stabilize this, and again, it's a natural process, is naturally, nature's brilliant. It provides something called an antioxidant, which it gives what'd you say, donates? Got me all mixed up with my languages. It donates a leg or an electron to that unbalanced two-legged stool. Do we still have three-legged stools, Sarah? Do you have any in your house? Because okay, good. No, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, a drummer stool is gonna have
yeah.
three
There
legs
you
on it
go.
every time. So yes, we
A
do.
milking stool would have been like three legs,
Yeah.
right back in the day. So we're in Disney. So an antioxidant will donate that third leg, so or fourth leg, whatever, to stabilize the stool. And if you don't have enough stabilizers, which ordinarily we would get from the diet, but the body has another way. We're going to get to it. Then you can quench oxidative stress. You can stabilize all these like free radicals that are flying around, and that's what we're trying to do. So, like you said, oxidative stress occurs naturally. And in fact, in sometimes we actually want that because it activates the body to sit up and say, you need to take care of detoxification, or you need to go and eat something to stabilize this mess you've created. So it's a natural process, but many people through lifestyle, through exposures, like you said, to not having enough nutrient sufficiency through stress or through genetics, have a harder time stabilizing this equation or stabilizing oxidative stress. What do you think of that explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you and I were chatting about a client that I have that lives in Colorado at 10,000 feet.
Ah,
And
this
so,
was brilliant. Yes.
yeah, so even just like poor oxygenation at night, whether that's an apnea or you're living in a hypoxic environment and the body has an excess of oxidative stress, you're hypermetabolic. So you're going to burn more calories, you're going to, burn through and, dehydrate so much faster. And so what do you do about that? And some people will tolerate, that kind of hypoxia way better than others. And, like, I don't do well, long periods of time at that kind of elevation, and it might kill people slowly, over time if
Well,
they can't tolerate it or they don't fuel properly in order to do so.
or classically here in America, we're going to go from 0 to 10,000 feet and go skiing, having had a glass of wine or a bunch of beers the night before. It doesn't work well. And genetically, you think about it, and I just thought about this as you were talking, that, yeah, we tend to be more hypoxic until we adjust at high altitudes. Well, of course we are. We all will be, but those of us who live here, we adjust, but a lot of times not when you get older.
Mm.
Just it gets to be harder. But HIF-1 alpha is activated by an anaerobic environment, and one of the things HIF-1 alpha will do is activate an immune response. It's true, isn't it? You think about that. It
Mm.
has many, many different ways that it functions in the body. It's very useful in the gut because the gut should be an anaerobic environment. And
Should
HIF-1
be.
alpha, right? It should be. That's another conversation. It should be an
Yep.
anaerobic
We've got
environment.
bloating
So
we going on. We're fermenting. We're in trouble.
that's going to be another conversation. Weren't you just talking about oxygen, but the gut prefers to be anaerobic, and HIF-1 alpha is really important there to activate certain molecules that the gut requires and to actually produce energy. That's another conversation. So, but
Hmm.
your client was interesting. I would see this all the time because I now live at 5,000 feet, but I lived at 10,000 feet for quite a long time. And even if I were going to the yoga studio there, inevitably, if you're in Breckenridge or Frisco, which are part of Summit County where I was living, people would come in, and even if they hit the yoga studio, some people had a really hard time. Even yoga was like moving through molasses for them because they'd not acclimated and they felt terrible. Why were they feeling terrible? Their immune system was probably on fire, quiet, well, loudly, but not necessarily like, okay, I've got hives or overt inflammation, but they were hypoxic, right? Like your client. So what did we end up talking? We talked a lot about what you were going to do, but what was the one thing you said, oh
Well,
my gosh,
you
that's
you
a great idea.
mentioned, yeah, you mentioned like, oh, in the town that this was in, you were like, "Oh, I know that they have a hyperbaric oxygen, studio." I was like, "That is
Yeah.
such a good idea."
Yeah.
Because she's having tissue breakdown, lots of injuries,
Bingo.
and she loves to be active. But the more oxygen we use, the more oxidative stress we have. So if you're exercising at elevation, so like think about Colorado Springs and all the Olympic athletes and they're training at elevation on purpose, maybe they do it better and they're,
Eh,
aware of that for some of their
eh.
athletes. I'm not sure what training is like at the Olympic Training Center, but yeah, adding oxygen to help acclimate, to help performance. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch of injured athletes who just can't recover because that tissue breakdown, the muscle breakdown, the joints, that's going to happen because of the reactive oxygen species and
Yeah,
oxidative
no
stress.
kidding. And if they have poor matrix rebuilding, which you and I look at all the time, so genes that we're looking at really closely are like GDF5, collagen, Col1A1, so collagen associated genes, as well as the MMPs, matrix
Hmm.
metalloproteins, they are often dysregulated in people. And some people have
Yeah,
a much higher.
GDF5. Hmm.
Yeah, and which means they either have a harder time rebuilding the matrix. So matrix can be any tissue, cartilage, bone, can be the vasculature. And when these MMPs are upregulated or mean they're disruptive, they're constantly trying to rebuild. Well, when you constantly rebuild, right, you're like on a merry-go-round that's going, or a roller coaster goes faster and faster and faster, the more oxidative stress you create. It's like a spark, right? Think of something going faster and faster and faster. There's probably an equation for that, like in physics, that we're not thinking of. It creates a lot of energy. It creates a lot of oxidative stress, which
We need more fuel for. We
we
need
need
the
more
we
fuel.
need, we need to add ingredients and nutritional
Exactly.
resources, or we're
We're going to
stuck.
get there. You know, the other thing that we should touch on before we move on, Sarah, is like, what's oxygen doing anyway? And so, so where we create energy, like the deepest, darkest, but most important kind of cell area in the body, which we all have, is the electron transport chain, which is in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. And depending on how much you exercise, you'll have more and more mitochondria,
Mhm.
right? And so that's why we exercise, build muscle. The more you build, particularly with endurance, the more mitochondria you have, the more of these electron transport chains you have. And the end result, the final like destination. There's a Star Trek piece here, which I can't even think of using, but you would know. Well, we need Zeke or Wesley to finish this off with characters. But like, right, the last frontier is where we actually produce ATP from ADP, adenosine triphosphate. And as part of that, you off gas the free radicals. So think about it with anyone, like whether you're going through trauma, recovering from something where there's a high energetic demand on the body, you're going to produce a lot of energy, but you're going to off gas. A byproduct will be these O2 minuses, these
Yeah.
superoxide dismutase.
Surgery comes to mind right
Surgery,
away. Yeah.
100% high stress, your athletes, high performance, and you don't have to be a pro athlete. You can be really pushing hard for Tough Mudders and weekend events and triathletes and be an amateur or just an interested athlete. And you know
Yeah.
what I see a lot, Sarah, and you can comment more than me, potentially, is, pickleball is taking over the world, right? It's called paddle or padel in different countries in Europe. But it's interesting, working with my PT twice a week and then you with athletes, that we see so many injuries from pickleball, and sometimes it's just people getting up and being active or moving in a different plane. But a lot of them are, they're not properly hydrating, right? They're getting injured through poor hydration, not knowing how to eat, how to fuel, like you say, but also not properly taking care of their joints, yeah, joints, tissue, etc. A lot of oxidative stress, recurrent injuries, and yeah, the ER is full of full of torn muscles and tennis elbow, and it's not funny because people are trying to be active, but I think a lot of those injuries are also oxidative stress related.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you toss in, heavy metal toxicity or mold or infections, those inherently are going to have more reactive oxygen species too, and they just disrupt metabolism. So it's like, what am I doing wrong? Why is this happening to me? And there's so many variables involved. It's rarely just one thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just trying, I think supporting, we've talked in the past about supporting detoxification, to help neutralize all of that so the body can recover and function better is step one. Is
That
how's
point.
how's detoxification. We can kind of come at it from both ends where we're both, okay, let's be reasonable about how much reactive oxygen species we are creating with over exercising or under fueling, which we see a lot in women, especially in peri and postmenopausal, where they're like,
Yes,
I want to
ma'am.
lose weight. I want to lose weight. And they come to us with over exercising, majorly under fueling, and that is a recipe for injury and
Mm-hmm.
gaining weight, actually, because your body's like, oh, we must be in a famine. We're not eating enough. We're going to go ahead and start and store some of that away. So
Exactly.
yeah,
All right.
being mindful of all of those things.
Should we talk about this fire extinguisher? What is Amanda talking about? Because the first question I had was, did you know the body has a fire extinguisher? Well, of course you do, Sarah, because I taught you the body has a fire extinguisher. No, we learned about it together, but should
I
we
don't know. You're
distinguish
the
that?
you're the mentor. I'm the mentee. Always have been. Always will be. We'll just
Except I
call it
learn
what it
from
is.
Sarah these days. But so shall I jump in with that? Like, what is she talking about? And then we
Yeah,
can get
go
to
for
the
it.
genes. So, one of the things, is because we both now teach and train clinicians around the world, but at the same time, we're talking directly to the public, our clients, and we're teaching, educating. And it is hard to understand what on earth this oxidative stress thing is and why there's a better way to handle it that we can do by stimulating the body's natural intelligence. So, what I like to do with oxidative stress, which is that spark, that if we don't dampen the spark, once it's sparked, like a lighter, or an igniter, then it will continue to ignite inflammation. So we need to stop it. So we talked about antioxidants, which we find in food, like that's what your vitamin C and your vitamin E are, and your vitamin A. And so they, in general, lend color. You find them in colorful foods, always in plants, right? So eat your colors. That's really one of the major reasons behind it. But of course, we have a better way, which is why you're listening to this podcast. We're going to teach you a better way beyond looking at your sequence. So we're going to go beyond the sequence. So antioxidants, when we look at putting out a fire in the body and taming the fires of inflammation, the question I always ask is, would you like to throw a teacup of water at the fire, or would you like to throw a fire hose? So a teacup has its role, or it's like the old bucket brigade, like our firefighters would pass buckets down the line. Anything we can do to put out a fire. It gets to the fire, but it can't really quench a really big fire. So that's a teacup or a bucket brigade idea. That maybe is a British idea, the bucket brigade. I don't know, Sarah. My Britishisms come in a lot, along with everything else from my continent. So think of your antioxidants against the oxygen or combating those free radicals. What we like to think of is they're very, very useful, and we call them non-enzymatic. And you're going to learn why in a moment, because when we pull on the power of enzymes in the body, the work of the movers and shakers, we get a much better response. So think of your teacup, which you need from your diet, that when we get one molecule, one of these unstable free radicals, one molecule of vitamin C or vitamin A or vitamin E will arrest or stabilize or provide that leg to the stool, right? So it's like a 1-to-1. I take your hand, you take my hand, and off we go. Next hand, next hand, next hand, right? Or next stool, next stool, next stool. But what if we could put all those unstable big stools in a room, my analogies today, and just push one button, right? And it takes care of, it puts all the legs back on the stool, or it puts out the fire. And that we can do, that's our fire hose, and that is an enzymatic or endogenous within the body process that we can do by activating specific genes. So you want to talk, Sarah, about how we activate the fire hose to work alongside the teacup.
Yeah, absolutely. I know last episode we talked about a client of mine who had excessive oxidative stress and histamine was showing up with kind of her asthma. And so she was having to use a rescue inhaler. So, kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, we have some of our first line of defense enzymes to help neutralize oxidative stress. So, superoxide dismutase, catalase, glutathione peroxidase, those come into play immediately. And we need a couple of our cofactor nutrients, typically minerals. So like a manganese, zinc, iron is involved. Magnesium is often involved and often depleted in so many people. Selenium as well. So in order to have these chemical reactions, enzymatic reactions happen, we need to check your genes and see like, are these, enzymes even online? And then how can we support them? So a dietitian like Amanda or I would do a nutrition assessment. Are we getting these nutrients in the diet to see if we can support and help these enzymes to function? So assessing how much reactive oxygen species and oxidative stress we have as a starting point and a baseline. What are your genes doing? And then kind of ushering that forward. But then next we have a process that we talk about ad nauseum with our NRF2 antioxidant pathway. So that would be your fire hose that you're talking about, Amanda. With we've got our teacup, which is, are we getting antioxidants in the diet? But also, do we have our NRF2 antioxidant pathway in our own bodies? Is it functioning well? So do you want to add to that or
Yeah,
expand a
let's
little
talk
bit?
about it. How do you like activate this incredible system? We call it endogenous, so within, or enzymatic, so the body has a way that we can fire information using this NRF2 at the gene Sarah was talking about. And when we do that, and we're going to slow this down and walk through that so it's really clear, the end results of activating this system, and you should all be leaning in and say, how do I do that? How do I do that? It's like 101 for eating is what we're going to talk to you about. Because if we don't get this piece in place, nothing else you do matters. If we don't take care of rule 101 of eating, take care of oxidative stress. Doesn't matter how many omega-3s you take, how much seafood you do and don't eat, how many colors you eat. Those are all important, but nothing matters until you get your cells back online and get this fire hose working. Okay, so when we make the fire hose work, let's go back to our teacup. A teacup will douse a fire like a tiny, tiny little flame. It'll hardly do anything. When we activate the fire hose, this isn't one-to-one. This is millions to one. It's a different way of thinking about things. And it's hard to understand this. Like, how do we go from 1-to-one to now I can turn on something that will take care of millions of these little critters? And
The
that's the
cascade. I
intelligence.
think
A
the best word is a
cascade,
cascade where, if you're like the waterfall,
a
we got to have
deluge.
lots of drops at the top that are coming down as a waterfall. We've got a cascade that it's going to.
Brilliant. We're going to initiate the cascade in your body, which you can do all by itself. Some people's body need a little bit more help, but that's where Sarah and I and our colleagues come in to help you understand how efficient this process is. And then we get in there and we up the efficiency of this process. So bottom line is, how does the process start? We can engage a master trigger in the body called N as in Nancy, R as in Robert, F as in Freddie, and 2, NRF2. When we activate this master trigger, we call it a transcription factor. It can target more than 200 genes in the body. It's brilliant. We are not going to talk about 200 genes today. But one of the major targets, processes it activates. So 3 genes that Sarah talked about. The first one is we call it SOD or SOD2, SOD2. Comes in like 3 different flavors, right? 1, 2, and 3. We mainly focus on SOD2 in the cell. And it needs a nutrient, manganese, to go with it. So that's its activator. All right, quick pop quiz. Nobody's listening because we're recording, Sarah, but like food that's rich in manganese, to put her on the spot. I pulled this out of my hat the other day. I'm like, I didn't know that, but does anything come to mind for you?
Oh man, I should
I
know
put
this
her on the
better than I
spot. It's
do.
hard.
Yeah, I should know this better than I do, but
Oh, you always say nuts and seeds, right? No, I mean, nuts and seeds are like nature's gift, right, for minerals. So nuts and seeds. But you know which is super high is pineapple. Isn't
oh,
that cool? Take a
okay.
look at pineapple. Yeah. So I would also think other tropical fruits. That pineapple is like, not that we run and eat that every day, but when it's beautifully in season, like go for the manganese pop. So superoxide dismutase or dimutase, NRF2 targets that gene. That gene initiates the process, it produces an enzyme that initiates this destabilization process or the fire hose or the cascade. But it has two siblings, catalase, CAT, and GPX, glutathione peroxidase. So all these three, they kind of work in unison, one slightly ahead of the other. It is not uncommon for Sarah and I to see those problematic. We say dysregulated, particularly MN SOD or SOD. Very common where people have high levels of oxidative stress, even if they're, doing their yoga and their Pilates and, doing that rebalancing work. Um, that can still be problematic. So we take care of that by giving it an extra shove, right, with NRF2 and making sure its siblings, catalase and glutathione peroxidase, work. And like you said, there's a cascade of nutrients these three important genes need. So even if we fire them up, they still need manganese, zinc, copper, selenium, and iron. Yes, they need iron. All of those have to be available. So you have to be careful if you're not eating foods rich in iron, or if you have an issue absorbing nutrients, period, because you have a gut issue. Can you already see that your body, if you're not absorbing nutrients efficiently, you're going to be hamstrung on how to put out these fires. You can trigger something, but you can't put out the fires if you have nutrient inefficiency, which is why we always work on optimizing the gut first. We can give you some support, but if you can't absorb the very nutrients you need, iron is very common as an inefficiency or deficiency, or it's over needed by putting out fires elsewhere. Or over needed, it's in heavy demand. It's you can see that nutrient deficiency can make you inefficient in creating your own cascade. So we look at this as Sarah and I look at this as a biochemical equation. We're looking at where the inefficiency, how can we improve the efficiency of this like line of enzymes to help you put out a fire.
Yeah, and there's medications that are involved that also deplete or cause either more oxidative stress or deplete the enzymes that actually help to neutralize it. And I went to the microbiome symposium at Purdue a number of years ago, and there was a gal who was presenting her graduate research, and she had oral contraceptives that were being studied with mice, and it depleted those three enzymes. So superoxide dismutase,
Wow. What's it
catalase,
would?
and glutathione peroxidase. And I don't see a lot of like birth control research, and what that does to the human female body at this point. But I was like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
oral contraceptives that are increasing oxidative stress. Therefore, it just that much more, requires that support for NRF2. But above and beyond that, in my athlete world, that's just a pretty common practice to be utilizing oral contraceptives for obvious reasons, just to keep playing your sport. And so imagine the ways in which that could hinder your performance.
And let's just talk about that real quick because it's an important point, and we won't go down a rabbit hole there. But when you're using oral contraceptives or HR, hormone replacement therapy, or just some people have very elevated levels of estrogen, for example, the detoxification demand on the body is higher. And two of the enzymes, so genes create proteins. Proteins are enzymes, right? That's so just so you know. Enzymes are the movers and shakers. They get things done. They carry their food to the table and back again. They're just servers. They get stuff done. So when we detoxify sex hormones or byproducts of hormone replacement therapy, birth control, what have you, the body requires them and SOD and GPX as part of that breakdown process. There's other genes involved too, NQO1, COMT, GSTM1 wheat, which is often deleted. So can you imagine the oxidative stress that creates if you don't know how somebody's built? So it's not an issue about, okay, birth control, whatever. That's a decision for the individual. It's, do we have the right information to help that person utilize efficiently what they're being given so they can continue doing their sport or whatever we're trying to tackle?
Hmm.
Super important.
Yeah, full assessment
So
there.
all roads, what you're hearing us come back to, you've got these genes, they can be dysregulated, we can work around them, we know why they're being, as I call them, rabble rousers, which I realize is probably another British term, which means the neighborhood, like a kid moved into the neighborhood, or the neighbors, like whatever. They're disruptive. So what we do in nutrigenomics is we find molecules or information that we can fire at these trigger points in the body. These trigger points are triggers, these molecules, the transcription factors in the body that can then target other genes to get them up out of bed or to, get them like moving a little faster. So NRF2 is brilliant. And what does it respond to, Sarah? How do we use food and what do we use from a supplement perspective and when do we use which?
Yeah, it definitely responds pretty well to a curcumin and a resveratrol, so lots of great bioactive compounds. One of our favorites being sulforaphane. So in our cruciferous vegetables, and seeing amazing things happen when we have the right nutrient variety and compounds that are in a variety of foods and the synergistic impact amongst them. So I know that that is one of the best ways that I've helped a number of patients is
Yeah,
our sulforaphane, and I come back to it again and again and see results.
it
So
is.
it's been really cool to watch that happen. And, we're always quoting Christine Houghton in her research and her support of all of that, the queen of sulforaphane and a mentor to all of us.
The other thing there, yeah, she really has. So you can check out her work. We're forever talking about Christine because we use different products she's created out of Australia. Her company is called Cell Logic, cell-logic.au. If we talk about products, we are unsponsored here. We don't get affiliate fees. There's no advertising. So we feel very free to talk about products and just know we're not getting paid to do it. So sometimes, and this is what we also see when Sarah and I, or any of us in this world of genomics, when we see genes in inflammatory pathways or genes that help the body quell oxidative stress, when we see them disrupted, and we see that a lot. Sarah and I in general will see people who want to optimize their health, but we see a lot of people who have struggled. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And a lot of times we'll open the gene report and bam, or genetic report, the oxidative stress area is like, don't go any further. You can't pick up any money. This is a major issue. And so it's going to have a lot of genes that tell us they're not on board. They're dysregulated, hence the issue, dysregulated. Their high impact means they're not showing up well. They're not functioning well. And in these cases, as much as we want to get those genes, get up and get out of bed, if we push too hard, if we push NRF2 to wake those genes up too hard, it backfires. Because NRF2 also activates a bunch of other genes that push detoxification, for example, which we can't push that on people who are already, their bodies are already overburdened. And so we also use a product a lot. I onboard a lot with this, and I know you do, Sarah. And it's a melon extract, actually, and it's known as glicidin, GLISODIN, glicidin. And that actually replicates or works alongside that MN sod, right? It's is that how you describe it, the glicidin when you use it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So it actually kind of step in and help or be a buddy to superoxide dismutase. So we're actually already starting to get the body to combat oxidative stress, and this is nutrigenomics. We're stepping in, knowing full well what's missing. We'll onboard with that to give the body a chance to breathe. Like, okay, I trust you. I've got what I need to start to crank this engine. So we'll often go on with glicidin And it's available. I know Cellogic produces it. It's not the only company, right? I think you can actually.
Yeah,
Glycidin is like is it a trademark product, or it's a
possibly.
protocol, process or a protocol? Forgive us for not. In other words, it's not like uniquely formulated from one company. I think it's actually used in a number of products, but glycidin. So you can see what we're using. So we're very quietly bringing the cells back online, bringing nutrient sufficiency to the plate. That's where your Brazil nuts or other foods. Actually, what did I talk about? Einkorn, which a lot of people, if you're gluten sensitive or you have to avoid gluten, it's not for you. But einkorn is replete in selenium and manganese. It's like this nature's brilliant food that provides all the cofactors, right, for all the genes we're talking about. So check out einkorn.
If only it was like, I feel like it's not even readily available in most grocery stores. You have to like
It's
hunt
not.
for it, hunt for like real food.
Isn't
And
that crazy? So Revival Einkorn is a company that I love, and Jovial Foods, but I love Revival. Yes, I have worked with them, but I work with them to help them position their message around genomics, because the nutrients, the value of einkorn, which is the original wheat, the unadulterated wheat grown in Europe. Actually, where Revival's growing in Spain.
it's one of the
Yes.
richest sources of betaine and choline
Isn't that
is
crazy?
before
From
we
a
restrict it.
natural food, y'all. But jovial's another one. So look for einkorn if you can tolerate gluten. It is not for everyone. Why get off in this?
Well, I
Got
was
off.
also going to say the glycidin too would not be appropriate for celiacs because there's like a small parts per billion
100%.
gluten. I'm not sure why though.
It may be the formulation for certain companies, so we want to
Mm,
just check that. It's an activator. The
mm,
gluten is an
got it.
activator. Yeah, it's really interesting. So, but check the formulations, because I know depending on who's formulating with it. But yes, if it's from Cell Logic. But I think one of the ways we've been taught when we're using that product, definitely not for celiac, absolutely no. That just a smidgen of poison is poison if you're celiac. But people who may be gluten sensitive, maybe gluten sensitive through inflammation, right, is what we're finding. And if we optimize the body, if we optimize the gut, we downregulate, we optimize the gut environment, get rid of dysbiosis. Oftentimes these food sensitivities can go away, but you work with a practitioner on that. Do not run with that and say, if I do this, Amanda said I'll be fine. Get advice,
Yep.
work with a licensed healthcare professional.
That's why we have a
And
disclaimer at the end of every
disclaimer.
episode. This is
Yeah.
not advice given directly to you. We don't know you from anyone
We
else.
do not
So,
know you, and also brings up a really good point that if somebody is reading your genetics, they are selling genetic or DNA testing. Please, what did you say to me the other day? It was in another conversation. This is a cross I'm going to die on. I will die on this cross. I will say this to all of you.
yeah, I think
Please.
I've had people come to me that have had DNA testing done with other companies, and those companies also sell supplements as solving the problem that they've
Yeah.
identified, which is not necessarily an issue. It's a bit of a conflict of interest, but if I can't see what genes they're looking at in order to prescribe the dosing or whatever supplements they're recommending, run away. And that has
Yes.
happened. I won't name them here, but there are, asked to see what genes they're looking at. If they can't tell you, if you can't see what genes they're looking at so that I can read that report later, if for some reason you were like, you know what, I'll see what Sarah has to say about this, then that is they're a supplement company. They're not a DNA company. So,
Right. Point number one, like totally. Point number two, if you were going to plonk money down, plonk, another British term, put money down. Put money. It's what makes it fun, right, Sarah? And I have to end this podcast by telling you like a new term that I learned the other day at PT, which you'll all fall about laughing about, but I have no idea what you people are talking about. So anyway, we have to finish on that because you'll all have a good laugh at me, which is fine. But with DNA testing, if you're going to put money down, if you're going to invest in it with a healthcare provider, please ask him. Number one, what is your training? Show me how you've been trained. you don't, and you may say, well, they don't necessarily have to have a degree in genomics because there's very few offered, but you want to see that they have been through rigorous training and that they've been in practice probably for at least 2 years. As I say, it takes 12 months to get your head around it. You can talk about that, Sarah. 12 months to get your head around it, then to practice, and then to be mentored, and then to be coached, because this work is pattern recognition meets rigorous nutritional biochemistry. You cannot put this into the internet or even into Chat GPT yet and understand it. And even if you could, it can't configure the patterns that you're seeing. So please require that they show you, yes, this was, and that you hear someone say, yes, I've had 12 months of training. Here's where I trained. And I went through mentoring. I've been mentored. Just require that, please. Because right now, as we're seeing, you can supposedly be an expert in functional genomics and coaching in a weekend course, or my goodness, in 40
40
hours.
hours?
40 hours was the latest.
No way.
Yeah,
That's
not
terrifying.
happening.
And
It
I
is
know some of
terrifying.
the, Facebook groups and forums that I'm in that talk about genes and MTHFR and all of that. They've put stuff in ChatGPT, encouraged other people to put their labs and their, genes through ChatGPT. And I'm like watching this, and, another colleague
Oops.
who and I are like, that is wrong. Like, you cannot, no, don't do that. And but everyone is paying attention. They're like, oh, you can do that, and then they just take it for what it is. And
Yeah,
we're
we
not,
can't.
the AI is unfortunately not smart enough for that yet. Maybe, hopefully,
Maybe
also
one
maybe
day, but even so,
there's
then you
still
got to know what to
nuance.
do with it.
So yeah.
And then because it's scraping, you don't, yeah, the dosing, the symptoms, the issues, the health issues, the algorithms are not there. Do not do it. Please. Let's go back to calming oxidative stress, and then we're going to sort of end on our CALM acronym. It's kind of cool for this one, CALM, with a slight change to it. So, foods that we can use. So the central equation we're looking at is how do we turn on NRF2, which turns on these genes. So we talked about the genes themselves need nutrients. Maybe I should put in our notes here, like little chart that helps you. These are the foods that help you
Well, that's, I
handle
think,
oxidative
your
stress.
roadmap, your food as a gene whisperer roadmap is honestly one of my favorites. There's lots of really great ones, and you've got hundreds of them at this point, I think.
It's, we're going to put this on YouTube, right? So maybe we can just put that there,
Yeah,
that
if you wanted to
roadmap.
put a little PDF link in
We'll
the
put a
notes from
PDF link
YouTube.
there. So you can see these are the target foods, right? But if you were to kind of put them in a basket, because you heard us, Sarah and I work nutrigenomically, we use minimal supplements for maximum benefit, but we're going to focus on food. So what's the food basket for this? For, the oxidative stress food basket look like?
I think, anything that is colorful is going to support those antioxidants that we need from food. Sulforaphane rich foods, curcumin, your herbs and spices, your even lycopene. So just kind of referencing lots of plants and, fiber even is going to help support some of that too. But yeah, I'm not sure if you had something specific you were looking
Yeah,
for.
so your grocery basket, like, do
Hmm.
not get out of the grocery store without at least a cruciferous vegetable. For
Yeah.
the scared of the crucifers, go for the ones that are less sulfury. So, go for like bok choy. You can always cut it up. Like, because I'm not going to eat that, right? You can shift and not cut it up so it looks like lettuce. That's really easy to use. Any of the cabbages, some of them can be more robust, but you could do a Chinese cabbage, right? So a Napa cabbage is kind of almost neutral. A daikon radishes all fit into crucifers. So a daikon radish, and I just remember Christine Houghton talking about, there's something about a daikon radish. It is rich in sulforaphane once you eat it or you cut it. It's not naturally rich. None of these foods are naturally rich in sulforaphane. We produce sulforaphane from them when we cut and chew them or we lightly steam them. So we always say in your will, cooked and raw is the way to eat. Cook your meat, please. Cook your proteins, unless you're marinating them and doing sushi. But your plants, if you can do a mixture of cooked and raw, you're going to get that food gene cross-talking capability. So daikon radish, why do I think it's a rich in superoxide? I'm going to go back and figure that out, Sarah. It's something she said. I'm like, I didn't know that. But daikon is this little candlestick of like wonderful like candlestick. I'm thinking of a flame. It's really robust. And herbs, I would say, you heard Sarah say herbs and spices. If you really want to navigate, go for Mexican oregano and go for what I call the Mediterranean herbs, which would be your rosemary, thyme, sage, parsley is fabulous. Cilantro is not Mediterranean, but it's, and for those of you who tolerate it, it's a fantastic herb. Parsley, I would say, is used everywhere, and if that's all you can get to, and it's usually more accessible price wise, do that. It's got lots of polyphenols and it's an activator of many pathways. So I would say Mediterranean herbs, Mediterranean oregano is fine too. But you can also, if you want the most pungency, then Mexican oregano. I've actually got Italian and Greek oregano growing here right now outside in my raised bed. So kind of diversity.
So are you saying, Amanda, that parsley is not just a garnish that goes on top of
Oh,
roast
right.
pork?
Yeah, exactly. Parsley is actually rich in a number of polyphenols, and one of them is apigenin, which downregulates or kind of turns down NF kappa B, which is also one of those like master switches, which we'll talk about another time on the inflammation immune side. So parsley is super useful. And of course, we're not really going to cook it, right? It's used, yes, as a garnish, but in your chimichurri, it's a major part of chimichurri. You can make a parsley pesto as well. So it's a really potent herb. So don't leave the grocery store without a fresh herb if you can, even if it's parsley. Keep that in your fridge. In some kind of spice, we can talk about that some other time, but you mentioned curcumin. Curcumin is
And
the,
turmeric, yeah.
yes, it's a bioactive in turmeric. If you're able to buy the fresh root, it's more potent,
Mm.
but don't worry about that. Just using dried, you can put it in all kinds of stuff, including throwing it in the chimichurri because nobody's going to know, right? You just put like a half a teaspoon in there and it'll just sneak in there
This
as
is
well.
where
So,
ethnic foods play such a pivotal role too.
yeah,
Every
thank.
culture has their own, way of using herbs and spices. We go to the Mediterranean diet so often, but like Indian food
Oh,
and
India,
Thai
yeah,
food, it's like ginger and
100%.
Thai food and lemongrass. And,
I
it's so
totally
beautiful how
agree.
we combine so many of these aromatics and
Well,
spices.
even as you mentioned with the chimichurri, so our different cuisines across Latin America, so many cuisines around the world start with grinding the spices, right? In Thai cuisine or Indian cuisine, it's like if you're not grinding something, you're tossing together all these dried spices, which you then toast to release the aromatics. And that's how the meal starts. So a lot of times we impose that in Western cuisine, like you think in French or Italian or Greek, we're adding something to put on top, which is almost like a garnish, or we put the flavor on top as opposed to bringing it out from underneath or starting the dish with these amazing flavors. But, if you're not there yet, you've got a basic, like, food gene talking grocery list. And always, you heard me kind of cajole or chat with Sarah about, okay, always say nuts and seeds. Like, just say nuts and seeds because honestly, you will get the zinc, the magnesium, the calcium, like in many of these things. Many of the minor minerals you're not thinking about are going to be in nuts and seeds as well as your B vitamins. So please find one you love. And if that's all you start with, that's where you start. I don't care what it is. And by the way, peanuts are a legume. They're not a nut. They have their own nutritional value. We're really talking about like try your almonds or whatever's affordable right now because almonds got really expensive. So did pistachios. So maybe you go to hazelnuts. That's not a great example, but maybe you find something else. All nuts count. All seeds count. And if seeds are cheaper than nuts, go for the sunflower seeds, toast them at home. They're going to be cheaper. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think helping people understand that variety is really the spice of life, but also like what, people ask, well, what's the best exercise for me or what's the best food for me? And I'm like, well, what are you most likely to do? That's what's sustainable, right?
Yep.
So what type of
Yep.
movement do you enjoy? Well, I enjoy bike riding my bike. I'm like, okay, how can we make
Out.
that a part of your, a part of your movement routine because you're going to enjoy it and you're going to look forward to it. Same thing with food. It's we can try new foods, we can add new foods and spices and herbs, but the reality is like we're going to come back to the things that we enjoy the most, and you should. We can put them
Exactly.
together in various ways and unique ways, but we want you to enjoy food and to experiment with it too. And that is what's sustainable, not like these unrealistic expectations of there's no way I'm ever gonna X, Y, or Z. It's like, it's okay. Find a way to, fit some of these things in when you can and just give yourself grace.
Yeah,
Otherwise you're
no,
just
I
gonna throw
agree.
in the towel and go, I'm never gonna do this. I'm never gonna be a culinary brilliant chef like Amanda, which,
I don't. We cook over here. We cook. All
we
right.
do like to cook.
We do like to cook. Let's talk. Let's sort of end here. With what can we do? And we have this CALM acronym, and it slightly changes. But C, and depending on what we're talking about. But C, let's talk about the C. What's our CALM method for oxidative stress release? So CALM. If you got your notes, Sarah.
I got my
All
notes.
right. So
Yeah.
what's our CALM? What's the
So our
C?
calm, the acronym, the C, calm the flame when things are on fire. So we've got those polyphenols that are coming into play, which olive oil comes to mind immediately. And it's what I love about olive oil. We've used the same way of producing it for thousands of years. And so if you're not sure what oil to use olive oil.
Oh,
It's you can't go wrong with an olive oil. But yeah, like colorful things, your berries are always going to pop up as polyphenol rich. And I love green tea. I love my matcha and pomegranate's great too. I had some pomegranate juice yesterday after volleyball. So
100 that just fires things up in so many ways, your nitric oxide production and all the things, right? Yeah, polyphenol rich foods, all the foods we talked about. And yeah, thanks for reminding us with like the berries, think of the reds and the purples. So all your berries and pomegranate, the real
anthocyanins that I educate my
anthocyanins.
little kiddos at school with the butterfly blue pea flower tea, and I'm like, okay, kids, think of what other purple and blue foods can you think of? And so it's really fun to be like, they'll remember like, what's that thing that's like this? I'm like, eggplant. I'm like, good job.
Eggplant, yeah.
You knew what an eggplant was, or of course, blueberries pop up, but it's nice to talk to young children about different types of food and go, I want to try other blue foods, mom and dad, and like have the kids think
Exactly.
about that a little bit more.
Blue. And they're not the ones that come in candies, like the naturally blue. Okay, C, calm the flame. A, ooh, this is a good one. Add antioxidant cofactors. And what that really should be is add the nutrients your body needs to help quench the flame. So that's what we talked about. What are the nutrients to support those three genes? Superoxide dismutase,
Yeah,
catalase, glutathione peroxidase.
those
And we said zinc.
minerals.
Yeah, all the minerals. And Sarah, what did I say to say, where are you going to get the best ROI on minerals? Which foods?
Oh, I don't know. I now I
The
know.
nuts and
Oh, the
seeds.
nuts and seeds.
She's
I know. She put me on the spot again.
okay, what's the L? Oh,
Uh,
this one's clever.
the L, level up detox and drainage.
Ooh, talk about this.
Yeah, we talk about, we got to take out the drain plug and allow things to drain a little bit before we add too much. When clients come to us, they're either already taking handfuls of supplements or they want to take the right supplement and we're like, no, we got to wait. We got to, approach this differently. I've definitely had clients that don't even tolerate B vitamins yet, don't tolerate magnesium as a supplement. It's like, okay, we're going to focus on an Epsom salt bath and your pumpkin seeds, nuts and seeds, to get magnesium from before, we're able to tolerate these things better. And we kind of like cycle it on and off. And now she does tolerate them. So it just takes time. And our bodies, when they're so incredibly inflamed, they are going to react pretty severely
Yeah.
to when we got a lot of inflammation going on. So
And that's a really interesting point. So to give an analogy there, so we were talking about L is level up, detox, and drainage. So a lot of what can happen when you have high levels of oxidative stress, if you don't kind of relieve the pressure valve. So what we do is try and support the body's ability to handle oxidative stress. But no matter what we do, if somebody is very toxic, not toxic in personality, but they've just stored a bunch of junk, or they don't get rid of those sex hormones well, the byproducts of taking hormone replacement therapy or whatever it is, or flying, taking a flight every week, you can become very toxic. So what you hear Sarah doing here is we're pulling the plug on the drain, which was for helping the body detoxify. So she was using things like pumpkin soup. What else did you say? Protein, of course. What else
protein,
did
of
you?
course. I mean, Epsom salt bath was,
Epsom salt.
so feet or whole body, and starting with a small amount and increasing it over time.
Yeah, and then adding in like things you've probably all heard of, like your leafy greens. But when we hear say eat bitter greens like dandelion greens or escarole or endive, all of these are actually prompting the liver to do one of its job, which is to help promote detoxification or get rid of this stuff your body doesn't want. So you hear us like very gently adding in things to help open up this trap, or whatever, like the dishwasher repair person's come over to figure out why our dishwasher doesn't work. Well, that's what we're doing with these ingredients. We're opening up the drain so that it doesn't back up and create this constant inflammatory situation. So we're doing both. And interesting, when we activate NRF2, it activates genes that help unplug that drain as well. So this is why you don't just do over the counter stuff. Or if you end up going to see someone who's like, here, we're going to put you on a detox protocol, we're like, not so fast. Your body can't tolerate that because we can see it in your blueprint. So
Yeah. The
that
things that
is,
slow that down are caffeine and alcohol for sure.
oh,
So if you're trying
100%.
to work on detoxifying, if you're not tolerating food or supplements or whatever, and you're still actively reaching for alcohol and caffeine to no end, that is not going to work very well. Those
Yeah,
are
that puts
slow
even
down
more
that.
stress.
Yeah, yeah.
And depending on your gene picture, if you have very slow metabolizers of certain nutrients or information in the body, yeah, those two are just going to up the ante. So we got the C, the A, L, and M. And M, I guess it should be the same all the time. It's measure and monitor, or monitor and measure. How do you know if you're inflamed? You can feel it. You can't necessarily feel oxidative stress. We can assume it if you see high levels of inflammation. So know what your baseline is. This is what we measure, things like a CRP or a homocysteine, or oxidized LDL. There's very specific markers that we're constantly asking for, or ordering, or requesting you get from your doctor. So we know where you are, so we know where to go. So elevated levels of insulin, elevated blood sugars, and maybe other markers that we're looking at. I can't think of any off the top of my head, Sarah, but you can't fix what you don't track. So know where you start to know where you're going to go. And when you see those come down, you know that you're starting to get the fire hose is turned on, the fire hose is working. But if you don't know what you're trying to put out, or whether you got a fire to put out, then you just throw in stuff at your body, and that can be very expensive at the grocery store or wherever you're getting your supplements. I think the average number of supplements that my clients have would start at 10. I've seen 20 to 30 or more with some of my clients. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And especially if you're also paying for medications. So know where you're going to go by knowing what your numbers are to start with. And monitor. It's almost like the M should be ahead of the C, but then it doesn't make a nice acronym.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You were going to add something.
I was just gonna say, when I see clients, I ask for them to upload labs, even if it's a couple years old, because often they've had this situation going on for a long time.
Agree.
And so I like to still use that as a baseline for like, okay, 5 years ago, what was going on? And how bad was it? Or we're watching like insulin and, glucose and A1C bounce all over the place or ferritin bounce all over the place. I just like to go, okay, how long has this been going on? When did it really get triggered? Why did it get triggered now and not 5 years ago and not 5 years from now? I have really targeted questions in my interviewing of my clients to kind of go, well, why today? And
That's a
what
good
was
point.
the impetus for even saying I've had enough?
Yeah,
I
no,
need
yeah,
help.
yeah. Yeah. Just
But
not moving the needle so often and spending a lot of money to get there. All right. So we come to the end. Any parting thoughts from you before I share my, I didn't know what this word meant? What, any final thoughts for our
I think
listeners?
everyone has oxidative stress. So
Yeah.
this topic really applies to everybody, and it just varies day to day and on situation and lifestyle and exposures. So we can't outrun oxidative stress. And in fact, if we try to actually outrun it, we will create more. So
Oh,
we
that's
have
true.
to
Yeah.
manage it and balance it well. Everything's a balance. So we're
Yeah.
not trying to do everything perfectly. But what are the things that feel tangible and sustainable for you to make those changes?
Yeah, and I think from a genetic standpoint, some people do manage it better than others. It's
Hmm.
just that's our blueprint, but it's all manageable. It just is. But like you said, yes, we actually need a certain level of oxidative stress because it prompts the body to take action. So that it is okay. It's when it's out of whack, when you're overwhelmed, when you're constantly inflamed, we know we have to tackle oxidative stress, but we know how to do it. It's called nutrigenomics and
Hmm.
lifestyle management. All
Yeah.
right, shall
You
I
tell
share
me.
my? Yeah, she's like, so it's like, what did you find out, Amanda? So I'm at PT a couple of weeks ago, and my physical therapist. I mean, I don't see her for injury rehab. I see her for functional movement. We've done that for nearly 3 years now, and movement mobility optimization. But anyway, she said, so we bought a slip and slide. I'm like, what? A slip and slide. It's like, what is one of those? And I thought, like back in the day, like and you probably seen them like back in like the 90s or whatever. It was one of those mats you could roll out. It had bumpers on it, and it was like you would speed skate on this back and forth. Like it was a glider, but we used it for exercise. And I'm like, a slip and slide. And everyone's laughing. I said, what do you do? And she's like, well, we roll out this big mat and then we get the hose out and then we dive at it. I said, do you ever get hurt doing that? She said, let me get this. You run at a wet mat that you put a hose on, like you water it, and your goal is to like go
God.
flying across. She said, yeah. Said, so you dive bombing your garden, right? And everyone's falling about. I said, I have never heard of a slip or slide or like head diving in my backyard. And my husband said, Amanda, in England, you have really small gardens, so you couldn't possibly take a running jump at a slip and slide. And I said, plus it's too cold most of the year, so who wants to dive into on a wet, slippery mat? We'd have like concussion in my backyard. Well, it was big when we grew up, but you think about it. So that was
Yeah.
my,
In
it's like,
Indiana, we've got sprawling space in major
yeah.
parts of Indiana. A slip and slide is probably something almost every household has had at one
I,
point or
I know,
another.
except mine. I'm like, so anyway, the funniest thing of all is like my PT said, yeah, she went home the next day and her husband came in. He said, oh my gosh. He said, I thought I was doing well, but I can hardly move my abdominal muscles. She said, yeah, the same thing for me. So I guess when you go flying across, you use your abdominal muscles. So I'm like, yeah,
So it
we're
was for
both.
them and not for their kids. It's for the adults.
I mean, yeah, it was for them. They were teaching the kids, so they were like diving at it because it's like 100 degrees out here right now. I mean, it's not humid, but it's hot. So they did it. But I said, you know what? I got to see the movement because I don't want to go head for like mountain biking. I've been injured enough going over the top of my bikes. The last thing I want to do is take a run in, like dive and a slip and slide. I think I'll go on my butt, please. But anyway, so these are the cultural differences that catch you. Like, what is that?
I'll send you a little video of when Wesley turned 2. We had his birthday party and got a little slip and slide. So we had friends over with their little kiddos, and Wesley just loved it. So,
Oh, I bet. Yeah. No, I think I'll sit and watch.
yep. I probably will
Anyway, so
too.
there you go. Amanda's cultural,
Your cultural
introduction.
moment.
Yeah, my cultural moment after being what nearly 40 years in the United States, I'm still learning. So anyway, we
This
hope
is
you
great.
enjoyed this. Any thoughts there, Sarah, before we say bye bye?
No, this is great. And yeah, if you guys have comments or, questions, topics that you would be of interest, this is us responding to a comment. So bring it on.
All right. We'll enjoy the lesson and we'll see you in the next one.
You bet.